The Union and Confederates fought each other in the American Civil War. The war began on April 12, 1861, with the Battle of Fort Sumter. Despite its smallness, it prepared the ground for the bigger battle. Lincoln's effort at flight and President Buchanan's botched troop supply caused submission.
The first land fight, known as the Fight of the Philippi, took place in Virginia and was won by the Union. It brought attention to the inexperience of both sides at the beginning of the war. Confederate victory at the Battle of Bull Run on July 21st, 1861, demonstrated the war's real beginning. The Union was swiftly defeated as a result of President Lincoln's decision to cease the war.
The Union won its first battle on August 28, 1861, at Hatteras. Union troops took control of Fort Clark, leading to Confederate losses on the East Coast. The Battle of Ball's Bluff on October 20th, 1861, showcased Union setbacks, with political ramifications for the Union Army due to its organizational flaws.
The Battle of Belmont on November 7, 1861, tested Grant's leadership, ending inconclusively, but boosting Union morale. The Battle of Mill Springs on January 19, 1862, secured a significant Union victory in the Western Theater, driving Confederate forces out of Kentucky.
The battle at Fort Henry was marked by unfair conditions favoring the Union. The fort was flooded, causing illness among Confederate troops, and their weaponry was outdated. General Ulysses S. Grant commanded a significantly larger force of over 15,000 Union troops compared to the 3,400 Confederates defending the fort. This disparity led the Confederate forces to retreat to Fort Donelson, where they could face the Union again a week later.
The Battle of Fort Donelson occurred from February 11th to February 16th in 1862 near Dover, Tennessee. Confederate forces led by Generals Floyd, Pillow, and Buckner were surrounded and surrendered to Union forces under General Grant, making a turning point into the Western Theater of the Civil War. This victory allowed Union forces to advance deeper into Confederate territory, capturing 12,000 Confederate troops with 1,000 casualties.
The Battle of Hampton Roads saw the debut of ironclad warships in the Civil War, with the USS Monitor and CSS Virginia facing off. President Lincoln's blockade on the southern coast restricted Confederate trade, leading them to use ironclads to break it. Despite the Union's numerical advantage, they incurred more casualties, showcasing the evolving nature of naval warfare during the conflict.
Confederate Major General Thomas Stonewall Jackson orchestrated strategic maneuvers in the lower Shenandoah Valley to contain his opponent. Taking an offensive stance, Jackson directed an attack on Kimball's left flank, deploying 2 infantry brigades, one of which was his own reowned Stonewall Brigade.
On April 5, 1862, General George B. McClellan tried to go around Confederate soldiers at Lee Mills, but failed. Instead, he decided to surround them. They built strong places to put big guns between 2 rivers near Yorktown. On April 16th, Union soldiers tried to check if the Confederates were ready for a fight at Dam No. 1. they had to run away when the Confederate soldiers pushed them back. McClellan thought there were too many enemy soldiers, so he planned to shoot lots of big shells on May 4th. But before that, Confederate General Johnston went to Williamsburg. Still, McClellan didn't give up and attacked Johnston at Williamsburg on May 5th.
The Union won the Battle of Shiloh when the Confederate commander General Albert Sidney Johnston died in the fight. Confederate soldiers felt very sad and not hopeful. Losing at Shiloh meant the South couldn't stop the Union from moving into Mississippi, and it also hurt their plans in the West. This battle let Union troops go deeper into Confederate areas, changing how the war was going.
The Battle of Fort Pulaski near Savannah, Georgia, showed that new guns could break old stone forts. The Union, led by General Quincy A. Gilmore, used these guns to force the Confederate troops at Fort Pulaski, led by Colonel Charles H. Olmsted, to surrender. Few were hurt, and the Union gained control of Savannah's port. The Battle of Gettysburg, which took place in July 1863 during the American Civil War, was a major turning point. It was fought in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, between Union forces led by General George G. Meade and Confederate forces led by General Robert E. Lee. The battle lasted for 3 days and resulted in a Union victory. The high casualty numbers and strategic significance of Gettysburg marked a crucial moment in the war, leading to Confederate forces retreating and influencing the course of future battles and campaigns.
This is a timeline showing all of the events that we have covered earlier.
We will also be arguing about the Civil War was either good or bad.
Our group has made a sample argumentative writing paper.
The Civil War was a terrible struggle that resulted in a great deal of misery, economic disruption, and fatalities. It split families apart, caused economic damage to the country, and had long-lasting impacts. But it also resulted in the abolition of slavery, which was a significant and essential step toward achieving justice and equality in the U.S. We will now compare primary and secondary sources about the Civil War.
A secondary source is Black Soldiers in Blue. The book is about black soldiers who fought on the Union side. It is not written by the soldiers, but by another person.
A primary source is The Slaves' War. It is a set of stories told by the slaves themselves. It gives another point of view through the eyes of the slaves.
Another primary source is A Virginia Girl in the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, being a record of the actual experiences of the wife of a Confederate officer. The story is told by a girl from Virginia. The girl also tells how they lived during the last days of the Civil War. She also narrates how she lived under the new Union government.
We will now compare facts and opinions about the Civil War.
A source we found containing facts about the Civil War is Civil War Facts. This article from the American Battlefield Trust provides a more focused examination of the war itself, detailing key battles, military strategies, and important figures. It offers factual information about the progression of the conflict, including casualty numbers, significant events, and the impact of various campaigns.
A source we found containing opinions from the Civil War is Causes of the Civil War. The PBS article offers a comprehensive exploration of the underlying causes of the Civil War, focusing on issues like slavery, states' rights, and the economic disparities between the North and South. It delves into political tensions that ultimately led to the outbreak of war, providing historical context and analysis. For example, slavery being an issue is only an opinion.
We will now compare different interpretations of history from different people. Unionists viewed the Civil War as an effort to maintain the Union and uphold the principles of democracy and freedom. Abolitionists viewed the Civil War as an opportunity to end slavery in the U.S. Secessionists viewed the Civil War as a fight for independence and self-determination and often viewed the Union as oppressive. Many civilians from the North and South supported the war and tried supporting the soldiers as much as they could, but other civilians suffered from the war due to shortages of food, supplies, and destruction of property. Some enslaved people viewed the war as an opportunity for freedom and sought to escape Union lines. African American soldiers who fought in the war viewed it as an opportunity to prove their loyalty to the Union and to fight for their own rights and freedoms. Some people from Britain and France supported the Union because especially due to the issue of slavery, but on the other hand, other people supported the Confederacy for reasons like economic interests and opposition to centralized government power.
During the Battle of Gettysburg, General Robert E. Lee's decision to launch Pickett's charge on July 3, 1863, was influenced by chance factors. Lee believed that his troops had a chance to break through the Union lines and achieve victory, but the outcome of the charge was determined by various unpredictable factors such as Union defenses, terrain, and timing, ultimately leading to Confederate defeat.
One notable oversight during the Civil War was the failure of Union General George B. McClellan to pursue and decisively defeat General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia after the Battle of Antietam in September 1862. McClellan's cautious approach and failure to capitalize on opportunities allowed Lee's army to escape, prolonging the war and missing a chance to potentially end it earlier.
A significant error during the Civil War was the Confederate attack on Union forces at the Battle of Fredericksburg in December 1862. Confederate General Robert E. Lee's decision to launch a front assault on well-entrenched Union positions resulted in heavy casualties for the Confederacy without gaining substantial strategic advantages, highlighting a tactical error in judgment.
Finally, we will be differentiating relevant and irrelevant information about the Civil War. All of the sources we have talked about earlier are all relevant. They all have something to do about the Civil War. On the other hand, some sources specifically did not talk about the Civil War all the time. For example, A Virginia Girl in the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, being a record of the actual experiences of the wife of a Confederate officer, talks about how the narrator lived under the new Union government. While this may be relevant to the aftermath of the Civil War, it is not about the Civil War itself.